50-50 people. There's people that want Todd Bowles gone and want like the offensive coordinator to stay, want Josh Broussard to stay, and there's some people that want Todd Bowles just out of here in general. They want a whole new coaching staff. They want to see the notification from Insta, whatever they get it from, just to see Todd Bowles out of Tampa Bay.
I agree, honestly. And, I think when we see people and, looking at this locker room, we saw after the game, and there's no 100% definitive answer on what they said, but when you look at what Vita Vea and Antoine Winfield looked like they were yelling at Hassan Reddick, and, you can't really tell because the stadium's loud, and that could just be how they communicate, but there is a lot of things that go on in the locker room that we don't see, and when you do see teammates yelling at each other, it almost makes you think that the locker room has been lost.
Yeah, especially with, I assume you guys are talking about the Hassan Reddick situation with Vita Vea and Antoine Winfield and whatnot. They were just giving him an earful, about his performance the last few games. And I don't know if you guys saw, but Gerald McCoy the other day, actually the morning after the game, he had said that he had talked to some people in the building who knew some things that was not public information about some specific players regarding their ability to actually perform at the best of their ability, and if they were or not, and if they were putting everything into this football team that they should be. And he said that they just aren't. Everyone in the building isn't putting 100% of everything that they have into the football team at all times, which I feel like is kind of almost offensive for a few people in the organization, like those Vita Veas, like those Antoine Winfields, that really you can tell they put almost everything on the field every single time they play.
Yeah, and I think we can go on about which players it really is, but it comes down to the coaching staff. Todd Bowles in an interview after the game said the coaches have done everything that they can do, and that's just not something that I want to hear my head coach of my football team say, because there's just no reason for you to ever throw your players under the bus as a coach. You need to take accountability and say, hey, these guys are not listening, but I am going to make sure that they listen based on what I'm going to force them to do during practice, and if they don't, I'm just going to bench them, and I'm going to cut them.
I also really hate what he said in his interview when he said, we can't be pointing fingers at people. We need to all take accountability. As right before him doing that, he almost put every blame on the players. He said coaching staff has done what they can do. The players need to go out there. This is their job. This is their livelihood. They need to play like it is.
And I partly agree with him on that, honestly. I think that there's definitely a lot of things that the players aren't doing that, Todd Bowles is coaching or scheming for them to do. But at the end of the day, if they're not going to do what you're coaching them to do, take them off the field and at least put a guy that, will try his best out there. Throw Kendall Vildor. I promise you Kendall Vildor will try his absolute best. And it just looks like, livelihood. Zon McCollum doesn't look like he cares anymore. Servosia Dennis doesn't look like he cares. Hassan Reddick, Yaya Diaby, it just doesn't look like these guys have that true firepower in them.
The thing is, I have to say, when a coach says, the coaches have done everything they can do, that couldn't be more just false as a statement. Because if your team is, losing, if they look uninspired, if they're playing almost, sluggish at points, the coaching staff, for a matter of fact, has not done everything that they can do. Because, you have to build a team that wants to go out on the football field. Even if they're losing every single game, they should have the passion to fight for the community, play the game for the community, play the game for themselves, and just, put everything into it. I don't want to see guys jogging on the field. I've seen Zion McCollum jogging on the field. I've seen Hassan Reddick jogging on the field.
And even Jamel Dean,
exactly,
who has been phenomenal this season, but still at times is just being lazy because the team isn't winning right now.
I'm a former football player. Aiden's a current football player. One of the first things that they teach you when you start playing football is never jog on the field.
Yeah, never jog on the field. It just shows weakness, to be honest. It shows that you don't want to be out there, and they're going to replace you real quick.
Exactly, and some of these guys, being paid millions of dollars to do this, by the way, just really don't look that inspired.
And when it comes to a coaching staff thing, I want to bring up the discussion of who is really going to stay on this coaching staff next year. I don't think a single coordinator will be here. I mean, other than maybe Josh Grizzard, I could see them keeping him just because of, when you look at the offense, there's not much that they can do with guys like Graham Barnett all-time low throughout the entire game.
Yeah. I mean, the secondary, it sucks because I feel like there was a point in the last couple of years where we were kind of looking at our pass rush and saying, hey, you know what? Maybe this isn't too bad. Like we can viably work with this. And then it was our secondary that was really the thorn in our side. But now it's so apparent that our pass rush is just abysmal. You know, they can't apply any pressure to the quarterback, any quarterback that they play. Offensive lines that, you know, maybe aren't even top ranked in the league are just kind of handling them very well. And, you know, the blitzes are almost seemingly getting easier to diagnose. So I think part of the reason that is because Todd Bowles has been running the same defensive scheme for the last 5 years on this defense.
Yeah, and I mean, when you talk about defensive scheme and, you know, the blitz packages that Todd Bowles runs, I don't think I've seen the Bucs get a sack in what feels like a month now. Like, it feels like we haven't seen that Jacob Parrish running off the edge and getting an unblocked sack, or that, you know, Levante David pierce through the middle of the line and get a sack. I feel like we just have not seen that since probably before the Patriots game, back was honestly a month ago at this point.
Yeah, no, I mean, it seems like his defense is just getting less and less creative every single game. He's now running just a kind of a base, almost like Tampa 2, keeping Levante in the middle, running two safeties back, maybe a nickel. And he's really just playing a base defense that's very easily beatable as long as you can, kind of scheme up some versatile plays. And the worst part about it is, yes, he will make halftime adjustments, and yes, they'll show up for maybe that third quarter, maybe even going into the fourth quarter, and they'll be able to build up a slight momentum, just like you've seen in the Falcons game, kind of in the Saints game. But overall, it's not stood the test of time at all. It's like when offensive coordinators find a couple of plays that work against the defense, they're able to exploit them the entire game. They run them over and over and over, it seems, and the defense is very easily beat by it. For example, in the Falcons game, it was Kyle Pitts, up the middle, up the seams, just
drag routes, simple out routes, just
exactly.
simple.
And then there weren't many other targets other than that. And as long as they went back and forth between Kyle Pitts and then Bijan on the running game in the flats, either shoveling it, just handing it off, getting it out to him in some way. They had a first down, damn near every other play.
And I think that's all any team has to do to beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers right now, is just find the tight ends on the short routes. And, you honestly don't even need receivers to play against this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team right now because of how lackluster that defense is with linebackers and, just generating pressure in general.
And I really hate how, for the past few years, we've really just sucked at making tackles in the open field.
Oh, yeah. That's one of the worst things.
Bijan's done that to us now both times that we played the Falcons. They've just can't tackle him in the open field. Two very bad missed tackles by Jacob Parrish. And he's been great at, crushing through screens and everything, those running backs. He's been great at that this year, but just didn't do good against Bijan.
Still just a rookie. So, it's hard to put a blame on a guy like that when he's a third-round pick. So you really shouldn't be relying on him to make plays in the defense.
Yeah, he shouldn't be the guy that has to be making that big tackle on one of the best running backs in the league. It should be all 11 to the ball. We shouldn't all be missing these tackles, which was one thing I agreed with Todd Bowles in his interview. People saying, he said we have to make tackles when they matter, and we just couldn't do that.
Yeah, that's part of the thing when I talk about the defense looking uninspired. It's just, not only is it uninspired, it's just sloppy at some points. Going back to the fundamentals of football, one of the things that we were just talking about, never jog on the field. Another thing is form tackles, right? Squaring up with the ball carrier, getting lowest man always wins, and then just making a form tackle. It seems like this defense struggles with that, and I don't know why.
Yeah, every time we were able to get Bijan down, it was those low tackles by the corners on the outsides. Every time he was going outside, he was getting big yards. It shouldn't have to be that. It's been the outside run has been our weakest point all. Travion Henderson showed that against us too. That outside run needs to step up.
And weirdly enough, our red zone defense is typically a strength, but in that Falcons game, it was a weakness for sure. It was really bad.
It was really just Kyle Pitts at the end of the day. Kyle Pitts was really just exploiting our red zone defense.
And it's so sad because Kyle Pitts has had more touchdowns against us last week on Thursday Night Football than he's had all season. And if I'm the Panthers and I'm a team that's looking to beat Tampa Bay in the division, I'm honestly going to go and give a guy like Kyle Pitts more money just so those 2 divisional games against the Buccaneers, I can have a way better chance.
Because then, I mean, if you get those divisional games, then that's just one step closer to the playoffs.
Yeah, and if you can figure out a sweep against the Buccaneers, honestly, in this division right now, there's a very high chance that you win the division.
Yeah,
and we're seeing it now, obviously. If the Falcons do beat us twice, they do win the division. But
the Panthers. If the Panthers.
Panthers. Yeah, Panthers.
Which the Falcons did actually sweep us last season, and then we still made it to the playoffs over them just because of we beat the Panthers, we beat the Saints in our division, it was a good way to get to the playoffs. But yeah, that is not the same team that we're seeing here at all. Obviously, absence of Liam Cohen, who's currently the head coach in Jacksonville, but there's just so many things that I feel like need to be changed as of right now to improve the condition of this team. It is not the end of the world for Buccaneers fans. I don't think this is a sign of like a horrible future or something to come. I do think that this team is still has the ability to be resilient, and I just hope that from a managerial standpoint and like the front office, I hope they can realize their faults and move on from whatever's going on in the coaching staff right now.
I want to bring that up because when you talk about front offices, I want to bring up Jason Light, and we've kind of trusted him over the last few years, but this year I think it's time to start questioning him. Not questioning his job, obviously. He's done a phenomenal job with the draft, but
one of, if not the best general managers in the entire NFL.
But at what point does it come to you need to stop trusting the guys that you have in house, and you need to go out and get somebody? And he did that with Hassan Reddick, and that was obviously probably the worst decision he could have made out of almost any free agent to sign, especially at a 1-year, $12 or $14 million deal.
Oh yeah.
But at what point? And I guess he did go after and he got Anthony Walker, which they ended up cutting because he didn't practice, which was a horrible decision, by the way. Just having another guy who was capable of playing linebacker in the room,
even in the room, just from a knowledge standpoint.
Yeah, it's ridiculous on how they cut him, but that's long gone now. But I do want to. At what point does he need to just say screw it and go out and sign a free agent who is just top of the line? Just go out and sign the best linebacker who's available. Go out and sign the best edge rusher who's available. Go out and make a trade for a third-round pick.
I don't recall the Bucs making a big signing or a big trade in a long time now. They had just nothing comes to
It felt like Hassan Reddick was the biggest signing we've had in a long time, other than re-signs, and that even at the time it even didn't really feel that crazy because Hassan Reddick hadn't played in over a year pretty much with contract issues, and then the Buccaneers talk so much about how they want this locker room to be perfect, and then they're going to go out and get a guy who has had multiple problems with organizations and has kind of proven to be a diva himself, but they won't go out and draft a guy who is honestly just a complete workhorse who will piss defenses off, piss offenses off, and get in their face and play physical. It almost feels like we're missing a guy like that,
Yeah, and I thought last draft there was a lot of linebackers like that we could have taken. There was Carson Sweshinger, there was Jahad Campbell, there was Barrett Carter, all those good linebackers. and just we didn't take any of them. And I do like taking Emeka Egbuka in the first round. He really stepped up when our wide receiver core got injured, but
I have to say, Todd Bowles, obviously, he was our defensive coordinator for that Super Bowl year, for the 2021 year, and then ended up becoming the head coach for the 2022 season, and he's been head coach since. But I feel like when they lost Devin White in that last season that he played for us, that role that Devin White played, even though he didn't play it to the best of his ability.
It almost felt like that was the X factor on the defense.
Kind of, sort of, and I feel like that role still hasn't been filled on the defense at all, because in the defense that Todd Bowles plays, you need two strong and good, capable linebackers. That's what you need to run that kind of Tampa 2 deep mid-zone coverage sort of defense, with blitzes every once in a while from specific, different personnel. If you don't have two strong, competent linebackers, then you don't have a successful defense, really.
And you also need edge rushers with this Todd Bowles defense. It almost feels like with the Todd Bowles defense, you need a very high skill group of players, or at least an above average at every single position group of players. And the Buccaneers at edge rusher and middle linebacker, unfortunately, I mean, Levante David has given everything to this team, so there's just zero way you can put blame on him, but he's not the player he once was. He's not the player he even was last year. And there's nobody on this defense who's even league average on the linebacker or edge rusher side.
Yeah, no, I mean, Levante David is at the core of our defense. He's probably the best defensive player we have right now, I would say.
I would put Vita Vea and Winfield and
I'd put
Dean, and I'd put a lot of guys over David right now.
Just talking about like borderline consistency, I would say Levante David, but
Yeah, but I think a guy that's on this defense that doesn't get enough credit is Tyke Smith. Tyke Smith, I feel like, is one of the only guys that go out there and show any bit of heart. And
I know Tyke Smith. I'm pretty sure he leads the team in tackles. Before last week, I know he did, and him not being in that game really showed them.
Yeah.
Like us not making those short tackles, not making the medium route tackles. Beat us in places like that. It really shows what Tyke Smith does for this defense, and really shows what we can do.
Yeah, and I think one of the players that also actually another discussion that I want to bring up is the Buccaneers don't have anybody who kind of shows heart on the offensive side of the ball other than Baker Mayfield, but Baker really hasn't been able to.
Jalen McMillan was so passionate. You could tell he was so happy to be back that Thursday night football game.
Yep, up until that Thursday night football game. It looked like the only guys who have shown any heart on this team this year is a small bit of Emeka Egbuka early in the season and Mike Evans, Jalen McMillan, who both haven't even really played this year, and then Baker Mayfield only earlier in the season when he was dominating the league.
Yeah, Mike Evans, you could tell he was just so angry, in that 3rd and 28 situation when they converted for the first down. He went up and, he chewed Todd Bowles out, gave him an earful. You saw it on the sidelines. He even walked into the locker room early before the Falcons, took that final kick and, put the game away. He was just so completely upset about that loss to the Falcons. That was a completely winnable game, especially with the performance that he put up. Although it wasn't the type of performance that he needed to, guarantee that he could have a spot at or an attempt at getting that 1,000 yards. He still put up a great day overall, and I feel like he was probably the most upset on that field that loss happened the way it did.
It seems like the Bucs just don't have a guy who wants. Who has like a celebration, It almost feels like Mike Evans is the only guy who actually gets happy when he succeeds, It seems like Baker Mayfield will do it when he's on, but he's injured right now, so he's really not on. McMillan showed some heart, but, at the end of the day, the Bucs just don't have a guy who's really going out there just to win. It seems like they just have a bunch of guys who just go out there and just want to get through the game, and that's it.
Yeah, I do, but Mike Evans being back did really show what he does for this Bucs offense.
Absolutely.
Him being back isn't just the stats he puts up, but it's he inflates everyone's stats around him. If they have to focus on Mike Evans going deep every time, it leaves those medium and short routes for Emeka Egbuka. It leaves those shorter routes for Jalen McMillan, medium routes for. It leaves more people open, knowing that they have to maybe shift Jesse Bates over and put AJ Terrell on, leaving their worst corners on other. It's like he really shifts this offense to something that it needs to be what we thought it was going to be at the start of the school.
Now, I want to bring up a discussion, and I think the Buccaneers have a lot of players who shouldn't be on this team next year. So I just kind of want to go through the starters right now, and I want you guys to tell me whether or not you think that they deserve to be on the roster next year. And we'll start off easy, and we'll kind of get harder as we go. We'll go with Vita Vea.
I think he's the best friend defender on this team.
Antoine Winfield
Obviously,
also
yes.
deserves to keep. Tyke Smith, I think we all agree that he should stay too. Now, Levante David. This
Without
one
a
it
doubt.
gets.
I think he should, but I think it might
Although-
be time for him to retire.
I think he should retire.
I think it's going to be time for him to retire, and I think that it is completely it is right that he's probably going to retire at the end of the season. But I think if it was a question of if he was let's say he wasn't retiring and it's the option is to let him stay on the team or him to go to another team or something like that, it's on our team.
Oh, if he's playing, he 100% needs to be on this team. But
Yeah,
I
he's-
don't think he should play next year. I think
he's
it's time to hang it up.
Yeah, I think he's the biggest defensive leader on this team. He's held so much leadership for this defense.
Yeah.
Even though he's been falling off like play wise himself, I feel like he's the biggest leader on this team.
Not even necessarily. I mean, when you look at his stats, he has 48 solo tackles this year. He has 2.5 sacks. That's more than Tyke Smith. That's more than Antoine Winfield. He has 7 tackles for loss. That's the second on the team, right behind Yaya Diaby. He is still a cornerstone of this defense, like he has been since 2013, and he's so just consistent. And you can't ask more out of a guy, especially a middle linebacker. As much as the Buccaneers defense had out of Devontae Davis.
I just don't think the stats really show how underwhelming he has been, which is totally fine because he's given us everything he's had. He's getting old. It totally makes sense for him to be slowing down, but I don't see him really creating that fire and getting those big hits anymore. It kind of just seems like he's, sometimes in the right gap, and I just don't see him being in that play anymore.
Yeah, it's super hard to do that, especially when you're playing next to one of the worst linebackers in the entire NFL, Servassier Dennis.
Which we all agree that he should not be on this team next year.
Yeah, he's just filling in, he has to fill in so much.
He reminds me a lot about KJ Bird from last year.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
just year after year, and they don't go and solve it in the draft, which is so frustrating.
It's just very
or for
upsetting,
agency,
especially like when you have guys like Devontae Davis that really do care about the game. Even if in the post game interviews he's kind of a little more laid back at times, and that's really one of the things that kind of makes it seem like he is going to be retiring at the end of this year, is that he almost doesn't. He's not as emotional in the post game interviews. He's not as, which he never really was, super emotional. He's always been pretty cool, calm, and collected. But he's I don't know. It just seems like he's kind of tired with this defense.
Yeah, it's hard to watch this defense and this whole team just over the last 2 months, honestly. But Yaya Diaby,
I think he should stay on this roster.
I think he should be on this team. Yes.
I think he should be, but only if he is the easily consensus linebacker or edge rusher 2. I would want him as a backup, to be honest.
I wouldn't. I think he's
I would
good.
want him in the Anthony Nelson role.
I think he's good if you also get pressure from, if you can get some type of pressure from either the inside or the opposite end of the line.
Yeah,
I think
that's
if he has a little bit of time to let the play develop slightly, then he creates so much pressure. He's genuinely one of the best in the league, I feel like, at creating pressure just because of how fast he is and how big he is, and just his presence overall. He's felt on these defenses, on these offensive lines a lot. It's just getting to the actual quarterback before the play is made itself is a very tough feat for him. Not exactly sure why. I think the biggest reason is because the rest of the defensive line is so lackluster. But I feel like he just needs a little bit more time or a little bit more opportunity, and I feel like he can capitalize on that.
I also think it's part of the fact that he doesn't really have. He's also, I think he's in his head a little bit. We heard him last year. He kind of said that he was just going for sacks earlier in the year, and then he kind of stopped doing it, and he got a few sacks. I think he's right back to that train of just wanting to sack the quarterback, and I don't think that's the right mentality to have right now.
Yeah, I think he should just be looking to create defensive plays as a whole. But there is that mentality that's taught where if you play at your max potential all the time, going as hard as you can, and that by proxy will elevate everyone else on the defense.
Hassan Reddick, keeper cut.
Cut.
Just let him go. Let him retire. Let him go
It
anywhere.
was a waste of money for me.
Yeah, you just gotta bite the bullet on that one and say, hey, clean that stuff. All right,
Zion McCollum. This one, I mean,
believe it or not, he's played terribly this year, but I would say keep.
You got to keep him. You
I'd
just
say
signed him to an extension. I think you have to let it ride out and hope that he can get back to the player he was last year.
I think you keep him, but I think you let the younger corners start to develop. Maybe you can start putting them in over him, like Jacob Parrish and Benjamin Morrison. Although Benjamin Morrison hasn't been what we wanted him to be.
Benjamin Morrison's been horrible. Healthy scratch on Thursday, which is just complete shocker. It's honestly just sad what the second round has been for Jason Light over the last few years. Chris Braswell, complete non-factor. I mean, I guess he got Cody Malk a few years ago and Luke Gedeke, so that's good. But
I have to say though, going into that draft, I actually predicted Benjamin Morrison being taken in the second round by the Buccaneers. I honestly can't blame Jason Licht still. Going back, looking at that draft, I can't blame him for taking it because he looked he looked like the guy hanging out of Notre Dame.
And he's shown flashes of being good in the NFL. And it does take time for corners to develop, so it's definitely not time to be like, wow, that was a waste of a pick. But as of right now, it definitely doesn't seem like the right pick.
Yeah.
Now, this is the one where I honestly am kind of the most torn between, and it's Jamel Dean.
I think
he's a keep. I mean, it's going to be expensive.
It's going to be so expensive, and for a 29-year-old who has that much injury history, I just don't think I can't tell myself that paying him top 10 cornerback in the league money is worth it.
Yeah, definitely.
For a guy who we know his past, and we know what he's going to end up turning out to be next year.
Yeah, definitely. You don't know what you're going to get from him though, because this year playing the best corner in the league.
But then
the year before,
contract year.
Year before, he was just not.
He was still an above-average corner.
Yeah,
at the end of the day, he's still an above-average corner even when he's not on. But the problem is when he's not on, he's also not playing. So it's a really hard situation, and there's really not much more to it. But one thing that I want to see the Buccaneers focus on the most in free agency and the draft is special teams. Even with how bad the defense has been, I am more mad at the fact that special teams has been completely horrible. Because it's also putting this defense into situations where there's really not much they can do, where if they let up 10 yards, it's automatic three-point conversion 2 to 3 times during the game.
Yeah, I mean, they struck gold a couple of years ago with Chase McLaughlin. So you got the kicker covered for the most part. Riley Dixon, he's been super inconsistent.
Get some guys on some tryouts here, and if he's the best guy you got, I'm not going to be mad at you riding him out into next season.
I still believe in Riley Dixon. I do think he's a good punter. I think it was so blown out of the water with everyone saying that he was one of the worst punters in the league. Turning on him so quick. I think he is a solid punter for sure, and he has good ball placement when he does get the ball out and when it does get down. But he has just been a little bit too inconsistent for comfort, and I feel like there should be some pressure added to him as far as personnel goes, and putting someone in at punter, in practice, adding someone from the practice squad to the 53-man, letting someone work out, letting an ex-punter that has proven himself before work out, something of that sort.
And kind of on the offensive side of the ball, I think relatively next year, unless we see a Mike Evans retirement or something that we're not expecting, I think we're going to relatively have the same offense next year. But there is one guy that I want to bring up, and it's Cade Otton. Do you guys see Cade Otton on this team next year? And if you do you see him as a backup or do you see him right back as a starter?
I would say I see him as a starter to start the year, but I think Bucs they look at the tight ends on the draft board, and I think they take a younger tight end or they move up with Devin Cole. And
I would really like to see Devin Cole get a lot more playing time. We've seen him really only get a select few of snaps in the NFL, and it seems like it's very late in the season when he does get snaps. And it seems like almost every time he's in the game, he's kind of creating an impact that we'd never see Cade Otton do.
Yeah, I'm so high on Devin Cole. Especially with that touchdown against the Falcons. I've been saying Devin Cole is the guy for a little bit. It's hard to say that, especially because he was a 7th-round rookie, out of Washington just a year ago. But I think he has such high potential, and I feel like he can be used as a Travis Kelce type of tight end, where he's a big time receiver who can make plays.
And he's a freak of an athlete.
Yeah, he's just a freak of an athlete. I feel like I would definitely take him throwing blocks out there against edges and linebackers and whatnot.
But even then, you can get Payne Durham in a split there, because Payne Durham is a much better blocking tight end than Devin Cole is. But Payne Durham is also a pretty decent receiver. I honestly do believe that both of those guys are better than Cade Otton right now.
Yeah.
Now, I think we should get into some college football talk. We had a lot of Buccaneers today, a lot of frustrations with the roster, the coaching.
We got it out of our system.
This team is way too talented to be going through the road that we're on right now, 2-6. It's completely outrageous. But
It's so weird looking at the standings and seeing the Panthers at the top of the South. It's just so odd.
it's not right. But with 2 out of 3 wins at the end of the season, no matter who they're against, 2 of the games are against the Panthers. But if you beat them and you beat Miami, you do clinch the division still. So it's, there's really not much to complain about.
So going into the college football here, Army-Navy, what a game. Navy beat Army 17-16 in M&T Bank Stadium in an overcast Baltimore, Maryland. It was a great game. I watched it. A lot of rushing from both quarterbacks there. They were really putting their bodies on the line. They were sacrificing themselves for their team. But it ended up just being Navy in the end. I feel like a lot of people expected that Navy had the better record. Navy's played better all year. At one point, it was Navy versus USF, and it was who's going to win. This could have implications on the college football playoffs, that sort of deal. But yeah, no, it ended up just falling to Navy. It made sense. The game that really made some noise though was the later game. It was 6 p.m., 7 p.m. I forget when it started.
Washington versus Boise State.
Yeah, Washington versus Boise State. Washington coming out with the victory, 38-10 over the Boise State Broncos. Boise State didn't get anything going until the very end of the game in the fourth quarter. It was a one-sided affair all night. And I don't know. The Washington Huskies.
Washington's defense definitely stepped up in that game, getting 5 interceptions against 2 different quarterbacks.
Oh yeah, no, it was a defensive masterpiece by Washington there. Washington, the alma mater of Vita Vea, Devin Kolb, K-Dot, and all these guys that are current Buccaneers. Jalen McMillan.
And, I kind of want to get into some college football awards here because that came out over the last week. I don't remember specifically what day. I think it was actually a night or 2 ago, Friday night, Saturday night, one of these 2.
Sure.
But the Heisman Trophy winner was Fernando Mendoza, as we all expected. It was pretty obvious that he was going to be winning the Heisman.
This was one of the weaker Heisman ones, so
Yeah.
a lot of people didn't like Diego Pavia being.
I saw someone say that maybe there should be some years where there isn't a Heisman winner at all. Like there should be some years where
I disagree with that.
Where no one performed at the highest standard. Because if you look at Jeremiah Love, if you look at his rushing stats, he had less rushing yards and rushing attempts than Johnny Manziel did in his final year of college football. Which is just crazy considering he was a quarterback. Love didn't even throw the ball. And, he was still a Heisman contender, top 4. Like you said, it was a very, very, very weak, Heisman year. But I do think that Fernando Mendoza deserved it so much. He played his heart out this year.
Yeah.
He's from Florida. So
and
Florida quarterback.
Indiana is a decent program, but bringing Indiana to a top-ranked school is really a accomplishment that isn't to be put down. It really is a very, very good accomplishment. And so he definitely did deserve it out of all the people that were running. But I definitely do agree it was one of the weaker Heisman runs.
Yeah.
But some other awards, we've got the Outstanding Defensive Player Award. And I think almost anybody could have guessed who it would have been coming into the year. And it was Caleb Downs. Just phenomenal defensive back from Ohio State. Just completely... He's an amazing player. And there's really no doubt that he should have won. But one of the ones that got pretty a lot of people got pretty mad about was the Outstanding Receiver Award.
Oh, the Biletnikoff going to.
And it went to Mekhi Lemon
over
Jeremiah Smith.
Yeah, I saw a lot of people mad about Mekhi Lemon winning from USC winning it over Jeremiah Smith because.
And I can't blame them.
Yeah, I think. Although Mekhi Lemon did post better stats statistically, I think Jeremiah Smith was still the better receiver overall. He played way harder competition than Mekhi Lemon did. Jeremiah Smith still disrupted the game, them having to double team Jeremiah Smith. They had to do stuff to Jeremiah Smith that they wouldn't do to Mekhi Lemon.
Yeah, and I think when you take a look at overall impacts on receiving cores, I think Jeremiah Smith is by far the best receiver in college football, and I don't think it's even close.
Yeah. Definitely with Ohio State's record too, that also really does show that because, record does mean a lot. Although fans don't want to admit it, record, in NFL winning the MVP, record obviously does matter. And Makai Lemon putting up these stats is great, but if your team isn't one of those top 25 teams, obviously what you're doing isn't enough to sway a team like Jeremiah Smith has.
Yeah, Jeremiah Smith, he had a Heisman contender throwing the ball to him, but still, like he showed up every single game and he posted good stats, regardless of if they were higher or lower than Lemon's at the end of the season. But yeah, if we were talking about pure impact, he carried the receiving corps for Ohio State this year, without a doubt, and he made so much noise, and I just can't believe that went to Lemon over Smith.
Yeah, but the college football bracket has been set, and one of the most controversial topics that have been going on throughout, over the last week since it came out is the fact that JMU made it over Notre Dame.
James Madison University Dukes from the Sun Belt Conference. Jeez Louise. That was a weird sight to see, I have to say.
And after that came out, Notre Dame actually declined to play in any bowl games. They basically said they're not playing anymore if you're not going to put us in the playoffs over JMU because, frankly, they deserved it.
I still don't like that move from Notre Dame, though. I think that's just a cocky move. You didn't make it. You did not play up to your standards at the start of the season. So I'm pretty sure they started 0-2, didn't they?
I'm not sure.
I'm pretty sure they started 0-2.
I do remember they started off pretty bad, though.
Yeah, they lost with the loss to Miami.
And it felt like they did that last year, too.
Mm-hmm. And it's just, you can't blame that. Obviously, I know they should have made it, but declining to play those bowl games, like FSU not making it, going 14-0, they still sent their players out there to play that bowl game because it's college football. Let the guys play.
Yeah, it's honestly a little bit, in my opinion, it's a little bit disrespectful from the coaching and just the whole team in general to not let your players, because there are seniors who have zero chance to go into the NFL who will never be able to play a football game again now.
They could have showed something that they might be able to make an NFL roster.
Yeah, they could have at least gotten themselves to a tryout, but now they just won't be able to.
Another mishap by the College Football Playoff Committee. I'm going to go through the bracket really quick, and I'm going to ask you guys for every single game who you think the winner is going to be. I'm going to go down through the bracket, and we're going to end up with the national championship game itself, and then we can talk about who we think is going to win the national championship. Obviously, this is looking ahead a few weeks. We're not trying to, get too eager, but just the outlook overall. All right. So first, I'm going to tell you the first through fourth seed. First seed, obviously, the Indiana Hoosiers. Second seed is the Ohio State Buckeyes. The third seed is the Georgia Bulldogs, and the fourth seed is the Texas Tech Red Raiders.
I think they nailed the seeding on that as well.
Yeah, I think the playoffs, I think if it was still the 14 playoffs, that would still be a very competitive, fun, playoff to watch. But now we got the fifth seed. We have the Oregon Ducks versus the James Madison Dukes.
James Madison doesn't have a chance against any team that would be in the top 25, let alone.
Yeah. If you put Notre Dame in that, I like that game a lot more.
Yeah, but there's just no way anybody would genuinely, other than maybe JMU fans, that would take JMU over Oregon.
Yeah, Oregon's gonna win.
Yeah, so it's pretty common. I feel like we take Oregon over JMU. The 6th seed Ole Miss Rebels versus the 11th seed Tulane Green Wave that just lost their coach to the University of Florida Gators.
Again, I don't think Tulane is quite deserving of a playoff spot either, to be honest. I'm going to go with Ole Miss easily.
Yeah, I think I take Ole Miss. Trinidad Chambliss has played really good.
I completely agree. Especially coming from Division III just a season ago, he's done so much. Now this is where the games start to get very, very, very good. The Texas A&M Aggies versus the University of Miami Hurricanes.
I think Texas Tech takes that.
Texas A&M.
Oh, Texas A&M. Yeah, I think Texas A&M still takes that.
I agree. Texas A&M is, to me, Miami Carson Beck just isn't really that impressive to me. He's an above-average college football quarterback, but I just don't think he's going to lead that team to a playoff win.
I think it's honestly up in the air for both teams. I think they could both possibly come away with that win. But give me Texas A&M. I think they've shown way more this season than the Miami Hurricanes have. I feel like the Miami Hurricanes, it being a competition between the Miami Hurricanes and the USF Bulls earlier this year at Miami just goes to show all you need to really know. I feel like the Texas A&M Aggies, they should have that. All right, moving on to the last game. The number 8 ranked Oklahoma Sooners versus the number 9 ranked Alabama Crimson Tide.
I think Alabama takes that game.
I don't like Alabama at all. I don't think Alabama is really that good. I'm going to go with Oklahoma easily there.
I'm going to go with Alabama. I think Ty Simpson, Nick Saban's last soldier, as they call him, because he was the last player that Nick Saban ever recruited in college football. I think he could lead the Alabama Crimson Tide to a win over the Oklahoma Sooners, believe it or not.
I cannot see it personally, but I also, I respect that you guys believe that.
All right, so let's say, in the hypothetical, that Oregon does move on, beat the JMU, the Dukes. Now we have Oregon, number 5th ranked Oregon, playing number 4th ranked to the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Who do we have? Oregon versus Texas Tech.
I'm going to go with Oregon.
I
Personally,
I have Texas Tech.
I'm gonna go with Texas Tech,
that
too.
Texas Tech defense is so good. You know, with David Bailey and Jacob Rodriguez, both two of the best linebackers in the game. Obviously, Bailey coming off the edge, but Jacob Rodriguez won the best linebacker in college football. Well deserved. He's been great this year, but I think Texas Tech their defense is gonna show against Oregon.
Yeah, I gotta say, Oregon's kind of in one of those weird years for the playoffs because they lost quite a few important seniors last year to the draft and also some transfers. And so, they're kind of in that year where they're still doing very good, don't get me wrong. They're a big school with a lot of NIL money. But, they're trying to fill some key gaps, like I said, that lost to the draft and the transfer portal. And so they're not the strongest team that we've seen from Oregon in a while. And I think, that Texas Tech defense is just so nasty. They're going to be able to hold them down, and I think that number 4 seed beats the number 5 seed there. Let's move on. Let's say the Ole Miss Rebels beat the Tulane Green Wave and move on. Then it'll be number 6 ranked Ole Miss versus number 3 ranked Georgia. Who do we have in that game?
I'm going to go with Georgia.
I'm gonna go with Georgia, but I wouldn't be surprised if Ole Miss takes that.
I would. I think Georgia's going to. I don't want to jump too far ahead here, but I think Georgia might have a better chance of, actually winning the national championship than Indiana does.
Yeah, that's a deep South matchup there. Mississippi, Georgia. There's a lot of bad blood there. I'm gonna have to take the Georgia Bulldogs too. It's really they've shown so much this year, especially at quarterback. And I like Chambliss. I like that Ole Miss defense. They have a strong defensive line, but Georgia is just Kirby Smart. They are the Giants and the Giants of the college football playoffs. They are the ones to beat. Next to the Hoosiers and the Buckeyes. So I think the Bulldogs take that one.
Yeah, they also did play earlier this year with Georgia taking it 43-35 against Ole Miss.
All right, let's say that the Texas A&M Aggies beat the Miami Hurricanes and they move on to play the number 2 ranked Ohio State Buckeyes. Who do we have in that game?
Ohio State easily.
Yeah, I'm going to take Ohio State as well. That's a pretty common consensus there. Moving on to the last game, let's just say, right, it was 2-1 for Alabama, so let's just say Alabama does take that win.
Let's be honest, either way, Indiana's winning.
Yeah, let's just say whoever goes on, Indiana's going to beat them.
Yeah.
So now in the top 4, we have Indiana, Ohio State, Georgia, and let's say Texas Tech because it was 2-1 on Texas Tech. So who wins, Texas Tech or Indiana?
Indiana.
Indiana.
I'm gonna go with Indiana there, but I think it's gonna be closer. If that is the matchup, I think it's gonna be a little bit closer than people would like to realize.
I just don't think Texas Tech's offense is gonna be able to keep par with Indiana's offense.
And who do we have? Ohio State Buckeyes versus the Georgia Bulldogs.
Ohio State.
Yeah,
I wouldn't. Yeah, I'd say Ohio State still takes that.
So in the national championship, we would have the Indiana Hoosiers versus the Ohio State Buckeyes. Who do we feel would take that?
I'm going to go with Ohio State.
I have to go with Indiana.
I'm going with Indiana as well. They have shown so much this season. And even though Ohio State built a team that could beat the Michigan Wolverines, the big game for them every single year that is the factor for almost everything. I just think that I think that Indiana, they have to take it. They have to show that they can. They have to prove to the world that they can. But we have done a lot. We've had a lot of football discussion today. We've talked so much football. I think it is finally time to break into some baseball.
There's been a
moves.
lot of free agency moves. It's really starting to pick up. The stove is hot, and I'm just gonna kind of go through the big moves here, and I want to get your guys' opinion on all these. So we missed a week due to us being at the Bucks game, but we're back, and a little bit over 2 weeks, or a little bit under 2 weeks ago, Devin Williams has signed with the Mets on a 3-year, $50 million deal.
Yeah,
I like that. They need. I mean, if they keep Edwin Diaz, they don't have to make that move at all. But I think
yeah, but they didn't know at the time whether or not he would stay with them.
He ends up not.
Yeah, ended up going to the Dodgers on a 3-year,
Dodgers.
$69 million deal. But I think honestly it was a very good move. I think it was a security blanket. But looking at the Mets roster, I don't think they're that much worse than they are last year. When you take a look at Jorge Polanco replacing Pete Alonso, that's obviously a big loss. But losing guys and trying to build that pitching staff back up, I think is the biggest thing. So if they can go out and sign a Framber Valdez or even let's see, Michael King, just going out and getting any of the top 5 starting pitchers, even Zach Littell, I think they're going to have a much better team next year with the amount of pitching upside that they have with the prospects right now. I think the Mets could have a chance of being really good.
I think one of the biggest questions is, I'll save it for later though, is where do we think Bo Bichette is going to go?
Ooh, I honestly...
Do you think he stays? Do you think he stays?
I think he stays with the Jays.
I think the Jays are going to make too big of a push and give him too much money that he can't turn down. But
Yeah.
I do think some other teams are really going to get in the push there.
How do we feel about the Rays and Cedric Mullins?
You can't hate
It's
it
such an
on-
interesting signing to me because of the fact that the Rays right now, when you take a look at their team, in terms of lefties, they've got Brandon Lau, Jonathan Aranda, now Cedric Mullins, Josh Lowe, who's projected to be a starter. You've got so many of these guys who are lefties, even Chandler Simpson. There's so many guys who are lefties, especially in the outfield, that you almost feel like a Josh Lowe trade is coming and a Jake Mangum trade is coming. And it almost feels like they're going to roll out with a completely different offense in terms of outfield next year. And that's exactly what I want them to do.
Especially with Fraley. I think Fraley was a little bit,
Brady got the FA,
And-
didn't he?
No, they ended up re-signing him after. Got him for a little bit less money based on what he was going to earn with arbitration.
Yeah, I think Fraley, I think they might try to plug and play him slightly just to see. How do we feel about Steven Matz, though?
That I believe was a really good signing, and the Rays roster right now sits at 40, and the move hasn't become official yet. But I do wonder who the Rays are going to cut to bring him in because there's definitely not that many guys. I mean, I would like to see Cole Sulser go, but I think if we were going to see Cole Sulser go, we would have saw him for Cedric Mullins over, the.
Didn't they sign him to avoid arbitration too?
Cole Sulser?
Yeah.
I believe so, but they
Signed
could.
him to a 1 year.
Yeah, they could still cut him because it's really not that much money lost. But I would like to see them cut him over, Yonio Currit, who they did end up cutting.
Yeah. You do a little
Because-
before
Well,
that
no,
too,
they
bro.
traded Yonio Curry.
Well,
for the
they
Phillies for
DFA'd
McCall.
him, and then they ended up trading him.
Yeah, they traded him for McCall.
Yeah.
What about Mets trading away Brandon Nimmo to get Marcus Semien too? That was a little bit ago, but
That was
that's such a weird.
That was
trade
such a weird
really
trade to me. That
needed.
was not something that I was expecting. But I understand it from both standpoints. The Rangers really do need a big bat in that outfield, especially with getting rid of Adolis Garcia. But I do think that for the Mets standpoint, at least now it doesn't look as good because they've got 3 true second basemen on the roster with Jorge Polanco, Jeff McNeil, and now Marcus Semien too. It's just and they're going to move these guys around, but I do like the Mets' plan to try to get better defensively with Brandon Nimmo kind of falling off last year defensively, but I also do like the Rangers' move of trying to get better offensively, so I think both sides, it's definitely a good move, but it's definitely very confusing.
What do you think about the Diamondbacks pitch to keep getting more starting pitchers? Signing Mike Soroka and re-signing Merrill Kelly.
It's definitely some. I don't know. That's definitely a move that I'm kind of weird about because it was a 2-year, $40 million deal from Merrill Kelly, which to me is just such an overpay. And I think even on Mike Soroka, they gave him a 1-year, $9.5 million deal. And as a Rays fan, as somebody who wants to get Adrian Hauser, get Zach Littell back, or get a starting pitcher with some control, I just do not see us being able to get him if Mike Soroka is getting almost $10 million. There's just no way the Rays will be able to go out and do that after signing Cedric Mullins and Steven Matz to over $7 million a year for both of them.
I think Diamondbacks really ruined the market with that signing, giving Merrill Kelly such a big contract.
Now, one of the deals that I really like was Pete Alonso to the Orioles. I think that's definitely a move that the Orioles really needed to make. I think Adley Rutschman is now the biggest X factor in the league. If he's what he should be, I think the Orioles really could make a case at going for a World Series, even with that pitching being completely horrendous.
I think their pitching's going to stay that way. Every time they try making big signings at pitchers, it just doesn't work out for them.
Yeah, and
they never sign the best pitcher there when they have the opportunity to.
And it almost feels like they shouldn't have signed Pete Alonso, even though I do believe it is a good signing. I just don't think there is a need for them to go after a bat when the pitching is such an obvious, need for them.
I do understand why they did it though, because I know Ryan Mountcastle has been on a downward slope for the past couple of years. So it's
definitely a big improvement on the roster. I just don't know if it was the right move to make to improve the roster.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's kind of weird. It seems like they're trying to overcompensate on their offense to give their defense a break almost, or at least their pitchers a break. But it's I don't know. It's a weird brand of like backwards thinking, and I don't think it's going to work out for them in the long run at all.
Yeah, now
especially not financially.
And Pete Alonso, the Mets were hesitant to give him a 3-year deal, so you can almost imagine what the Mets were thinking when it comes to Pete Alonso in terms of his, play style and what they project him to be over the next few years.
Yeah, his longevity is not guaranteed at all.
And so the Orioles giving him 5 years, as a Rays fan, almost can give you some hope that they just kind of wasted money.
Yeah,
2 years from now.
At first, I was worried. Like at first, when the notification came across my phone screen, I was sitting in 6th period. I was just like, God, dude, that's not good. But looking at it now, there could have been worse signings for sure.
And I heard a lot of people were looking at you because you got pretty angry when he did sign during that 6th period.
Yeah, no, I was just sitting there. It was pretty quiet. Just going, no, dude, just lost it.
Everyone's staring at you. Pretty embarrassing if you ask me,
Yeah,
but
it's kind of embarrassing.
But maybe one of my favorite moves of the entire MLB free agency so far was Robert Suarez to the Braves, and they don't plan on him being a closer, at least this year, with Rafael Iglesias. And I think that just turned into maybe the best 1-2 punch in the entire league with Rafael Iglesias and now Robert Suarez in the 8-9. I don't think any team is going to be able to break through that.
Yeah. No, I mean, unless your team is very deep with bats and that
unless you're the Dodgers.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Just pretty much unless you're the Dodgers.
Beat anyone.
Yeah. Unless you're the Dodgers, I mean, I don't think you would want to see the Braves in a playoff series with those two guys being able to come out and close out. But one of the things that has been kind of circulating recently, and I've had a lot of discussion with Tristan about this, is Ketel Marte to the Rays. What do we think about that?
I think he should. I think it'd be a great bat to bring over to Tampa Bay. We've been kind of lackluster, and we've actually been great in the infield with having
But
Carson Williams.
Imagine an order of lineup with Brandon Lau, Jonathan Aranda, Yandy Diaz, Junior Caminero, Cedric Mullins, Ketel Marte, Josh Lowe, as an 8-hitter, Chandler Simpson as the 1, I guess, that way, because just lineup construction, it makes the most sense. And then, obviously, catcher is still in a very, very bad situation. But
that brings to, where are we gonna put Brandon Lau?
I think Ketel Marte moves to center. I think you keep Cedric Mullins there in left, and then I think you put Josh Lowe in right.
And then you want to keep Yandy at DH, and you want to move
Aranda at first. Yeah.
And then who do you want to have at short?
Carson Williams, I guess.
Williams still, and then have Lau at second, and then
I think
third, obviously.
I mean, I think that's up there with one of the best lineups in the league. I think the Rays already do have top to bottom the best infield DH combo in the league, but I think if you add Ketel Marte to the outfield, you honestly put that outfield in the above average group. And there's honestly, I don't think there's really any team that is, I think the Rays are up there with top 3 offenses in the league if they do end up getting Ketel Marte. And I think it's worth giving up, the pitching we've heard rumors of Ryan Pepio and Shane Baz being two of the guys
I was gonna say
that are the core front.
Jake kind of already knows how I feel about this,
Yep.
but Ketel Marte getting signed to the Rays is just I'm
Traded.
not super big on it. Yeah, I mean trading. I'm not super big on it because I just don't think that the Rays organization would do it. I don't think Neander would do it. I don't think they would go for it just because you're giving up so much of your your starting pitching with Shane Baz and Pepio that it's too big of a bullet for them to take. I just don't think they would do it. Like knowing this organization, knowing how they operate and how they have,
I don't think they would do it, but if they do, it would be probably the best possible move. Because
I don't know. You've just been going around saying, get ready for Ketel Marte to be a Ray. And I don't think we should be getting our hopes up.
I'm getting my hopes up. I'm getting my hopes up.
I feel like there's a lot of false hope getting spread around.
I think the only way that they do end up pulling the trigger on that is if they're confident that Shane McClanahan can make a full return next year. And, if he does, you're looking at a rotation like this, assuming that Pepio and Baz would be two of the people to go away. You're looking at a rotation of McClanahan, Rasmussen, Ian Seymour, Steven Matz, and Joe Boyle, with Yoendris Gomez kind of being a, depth piece, along with, Joe Rock and Alex Cook maybe even sometime later in the season.
But is McClanahan a guarantee at this point?
And that's
also why I agree that they won't pull the trigger unless they are fully confident that Shane McClanahan will be back and healthy for next year.
That also doesn't say anything about them signing any pitchers in free agency.
Yeah, they could also go out and get, Adrian Hauser. If they can get him on like a 1-year, $7 million deal, who's to say, that's another great depth piece to have. And I think you can give up 2 major league starting pitchers along with, Trey Morgan and I would even give up the top pitching prospect, Brody Hopkins, in that deal to get a guy like Ketel Marte in that outfield, because if your offense is that good, you don't need the pitching to be top of the line like it has been for years. I think you can sacrifice a little bit of pitching.
You would already still have two top line pitchers, Drew Rasmussen and Shane McClanahan.
Yeah.
2 great pitchers that showed that
and
they do a lot.
Honestly, I think if you do get Ketel Marte, you have maybe the best 1-2 punch in the entire league in terms of offense. Junior Caminero and Ketel Marte being on the same team would just be completely... I don't think anybody in the league would be able to pitch to that. Like that 2-3 in the order, and then going to Yandy Diaz and Brandon Lau at 4-5, and it's just, and then a Ronda at the 6 hole. There's just so many guys. The lineup would be so deep, and it's honestly just crazy to think about that the Rays are even in the running.
Yeah, it almost feel like almost every inning, I feel like we could just put up a run or two, because Yandy Diaz is one of the best guys in terms of... One of the best hitters in general.
Yeah, and especially in terms of getting RBIs and, getting guys from scoring position in. He's one of the best RBI producers in the entire league. But, when you take a look at the Ketel Marte trade, if you're hesitant about giving up, a guy like Ryan Pepio, who I know you are, I just want to give some reassurance. We would have Ketel Marte for the next 5 seasons, which is longer than we will have Ryan Pepio. It's longer than we'll have Shane Baz. Not longer than we'll have the 2 prospects, but, and it's even something that in 2 years the Rays might try to flip him and try to get something back from him, maybe even major league starting pitching. And, I think just getting some difference in this roster and not running it back with relatively the same team every year is something that the Rays desperately need.
Yeah, adding a strong switch hitter to this lineup, too, would be really phenomenal. We had Jake Mangum last year and Taylor Walls, but are they really strong hitters?
Now, I think it's time we have to wrap it up. So we want to thank you for tuning into this week's episode of Between the Lines with Tristan, Jake, and Aiden. As always, we be live every Sunday from 11 to 12, so make sure you tune in, and we wish you and your families a happy holidays. Have a great week.